Welcome to January 2026, where on the other side of the New Year's, we are all about New Year, New Me. I want to talk about today why some of the personal development strategies and the typical New Year strategies don't work for ADHD brains. If you're an ADHD college student watching this in January, let me guess, you were really motivated a few weeks ago. You had the best of intentions, maybe even a plan, and now you might not even remember what your New Year's resolutions were. And if you do remember, they probably already feel a little unrealistic, a little overwhelming, and perhaps you've quietly abandoned them. That's not because you don't care. It's not because you're a bad person. It's because New Year, New Me is built for brains that have stable executive functioning. Hi, I'm Amy. I'm a behavior analyst, an ADHD college coach, and founder of Next Step Navigator. I've worked with lots of neurodivergent students, many of them brilliant, creative, and insightful, who struggle not because they couldn't do the work, but because college exposes gaps in executive functioning that they were never aware of before and never had to troubleshoot on their own. So today I want to talk about something called the Misogi challenge, and more importantly, why these traditional versions of New Year, New Me don't work for ADHD brains and are not ADHD friendly, and how we have to fundamentally redesign things for our ADHD brains and for college students with ADHD. What is Misogi and why does it sound so appealing? So the Misogi challenge comes from a traditional Shinto practice centered around purification through discomfort. In modern personal development spaces, it has been reframed as this idea that once a year, you should do something really, really hard. You should do something intimidating, something unfamiliar, and something that you have to prepare for throughout the year. And that there's about a 50-50 chance that you might fail. The promise is that that one intense experience can reshape your mindset for the rest of the year. And honestly, on the surface, this kind of sounds like a great idea for ADHD students. There's novelty, there's intensity, it's a single meaningful event instead of a daily routine. So why doesn't it work the way that people think it might work? The traditional idea of this Misogi might be a failure for ADHD brains. And here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. The traditional Misogi assumes three things that do not reliably hold true for ADHD brains. Number one, the assumption that this lesson would generalize automatically throughout the rest of the year. So the idea that I did this hard thing once, so now I'm going to remember this feeling and draw on that later. But ADHD brains struggle with transfer and generalization. The emotional learning from that one big event doesn't automatically carry forward unless it's intentionally scaffolded. So instead of I did something hard so I can do hard things, many ADHD students experience, that was intense, and now it's done. Thank God I never have to think about that again. Assumption two is that the memory and narrative stay intact, and that the Misogi relies heavily on that autobiographical memory and assumes that 6 months later, a student would remember when I did that really hard thing? But ADHD students often have weak recall for internal experiences. They have difficulty accessing past success during stress, and they have emotional memory that fades faster than shame. So that confidence boost can disappear really quickly, but the pressure to live up to it stays, and that can be dangerous. That's why you have a lot of ADHD students who are exceptional athletes, exceptional in super focused areas, but they forget that those skills can actually transfer into their everyday life, and they still suffer from self-confidence issues, even though they're amazing individuals in one area of their life. Assumption three is that one giant challenge builds self-trust. For many ADHD students, big high-stakes challenges actually activate avoidance, not resilience. Why? Because when that challenge feels too far removed from daily life, the takeaway becomes, I survived that, but I still can't handle regular life and regular college stuff. And so that reinforces the belief that I can do extreme things, but I can't do normal things. So that's not growth, and it's not actually helpful. It's actually fragmentation. So the ADHD reality is that confidence does not precede functioning. Here's the key reframe. For ADHD students, self-trust is context specific. They don't struggle because they lack grit. They struggle because they lack evidence in the environment that actually matters. Classrooms, emails, deadlines, conversations, transitions, and once a year, unrelated challenges don't touch the places where avoidance lives. So instead of building resilience, it can actually quietly confirm, I'm good at dramatic resets, but not at sustainable progress. And so that's why I want us to reframe this idea, because I do think Misogis can be helpful for ADHD students in a different way. So I think an ADHD Misogi should be small enough to remember, close enough to daily life to transfer, designed to expose avoidance and not overwhelm, and most importantly, it's not just once a year. It's not even just once a season or even once a semester. I kind of think we should do these weekly. So what I've been challenging my students to do is to choose one centralized thing or theme as a Misogi to practice one time a week. And so the Misogi rules reframed are: rule number 1, it needs to be short and contained, 6 to 24 hours max. Rule number 2, it needs to be situated in real life, so the challenge must live inside the environment that the student actively avoids, mostly school. It must be identity focused. This is a big one. It must be identity focused, not outcome based. So things like I stay, I ask, I submit, and I tolerate. Rule number 4, it must be designed for reflection, not memory. We don't rely on remembering how this felt. We capture it while it's happening so that we can know that we're capable of it. ADHD-friendly Misogi examples are actually working for my ADHD students right now. So here's some of them that our current students are working on. The office hour Misogi. The challenge for in a week to go to every single class is office hours. The imperfect submission Misogi. To submit imperfect work even if it's not done. The no escape study day. This is one of my favorites. This is 2 to 6 hours of studying with built-in breaks and no disappearing, which means no doom scrolling, just pre-planned reinforcement breaks to where you're listening to music or relaxing or taking a walk or getting some sunshine. However, you are not using whatever vice it is that we use to escape everyday life. So TV, reading, sleeping, all of those things. We have a pre-planned study time where even when we're bored, we sit with that boredom. Here is another one that I love that one of my students is using 4 times this month. The hard conversation Misogi. Having one real hard conversation that you've been avoiding all semester. These aren't dramatic, they're very targeted, and they can even be prepared for and practiced with somebody that you love, trust, or a coach. Doing these type of Misogis once a week and actually preparing for them are actually building habits that will translate into the environment and can be extremely helpful for the ADHD student. And so what changes is that these ADHD students, when they accomplish this, they know that they have these skills within the environment and that they can draw on them. The biggest part of this is reminding themselves of what they did. So we asked them to write it down on a Post-it note. One of my students literally has a reminder that pops up during their study block that says, I can study without doom scrolling for 2 hours. So the Misogi isn't a miracle for motivation. It's literally just a predictability and a commitment to one trait that really helps executive functioning. Students can learn that when I feel some discomfort and usually want to escape, when I don't escape, that feeling will peak and then fall. They will learn that they don't have to necessarily fix the feeling of boredom, anxiety, or overwhelm to actually move forward, and that they can move forward even while holding that feeling, and that they lean on their executive functioning skills. Now here is a hidden pro tip. The more that students do this and the more that they rely on these, the less anxiety they have, because they know that they have the skills and the grit in this environment. And so it becomes transformative and it actually builds resilience that transfers. So if you are already exhausted by New Year, New Me, good. You don't need a once a year overhaul. You need strategic acceptance of discomfort placed exactly where your brain tends to disappear and get overwhelmed and escape. That's the ADHD version of Misogi. And if you want help designing challenges that would make sense for you, not everyone else, like this, ones that are hard but not harmful, ones that are hard but possible, that's what we do inside of ADHD coaching and ADHDU. Because resilience isn't built by pushing harder. It's built by learning repeatedly that you don't have to leave when things get uncomfortable.